You're listening to the Human Story Podcast, conversations on the all encompassing human experience.
Well, welcome back to another edition of The Human Story, the first edition for 2026.
We're back.
We're back and bold and ready to move forward. On that note, Shami, how are you doing?
I'm well. I feel windswept because as I walked into the building, you know what happened. This is Cape Town and the wind is here to stay. It's been like weeks of it.
Yeah.
But I'm good and I'm so happy to be here, to have returned to the studio.
It's true.
And today we have a guest co-host, which I'm very excited to introduce you to my friend Gila. Welcome, Gila.
Welcome, Gila.
Thanks, guys. It's a privilege to be here.
So Gila's my everything friend.
I love that analogy.
But mostly my forest communion friend.
Yes.
And my neurodivergent, neurospicy sister. I think if there's ever a person that could completely get me, I mean, there's a lot of, and all my friends do get me, Lincoln does too. I get to have both of them today. Yay!
The masculine and the feminine.
Yes,
There we go.
Yeah.
You both so beautifully do that. I mean, both of it. But yeah, I'm so happy to have you on board. And yeah, could you share with our audience a little bit more about yourself?
I can. Let's start with the most awkward question that you could possibly ask me, and we'll take it from there. So, where to start? I am human, and I'm here for the human story.
Yes.
And I guess how I weave into the conversation today is I'm an occupational therapist working most specifically in palliative care, which is an exquisite place for people to explore their humanity. And it's
I agree.
one of the most incredible places to bear witness to people's humanity when they're walking on that journey. And I'm also a breathwork practitioner and a yin yoga teacher. And at times when I'm lucky enough, all three weave together and then my path splits and I do separate things. But this is where I find myself most aligned, is when I'm creating spaces for people to explore their humanity, whether it's through stillness, whether it's through breath, or whether it's through coming to terms with what death and dying means to them. So that's me when I'm not in a forest with you.
Yes. Wow. I just kind of want to tap into that and ask everybody, do they feel that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I felt the part about you saying when you see people walk maybe and have to face, whether it's family members or the person going through something, possibly facing death.
Yeah.
But then you say you have the other experience of exploring nature and forest and rebirthing. To live in that antithesis must be quite a wonderful experience.
It is. It's so multifaceted and it's actually just such a gift.
Yeah.
To be able to witness more and more the layers of life on this planet.
Yeah.
And it's not it's not life and death. It's all woven together, and it's the more time I spend in nature actually, and in the forest and mountains and in the ocean, it affirms that it's all just this exquisite unfolding. And the more we allow ourselves to go with it, the more potential and depth there is in the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing, as usual. Do you understand why she's my friend?
I do now.
Do you see that? Yeah, so thank you. How beautiful. And thank you for reminding me why we are everything people to each other. But yeah, I'm so happy to have you with us in this conversation. And I think you almost already began the discussion with your introduction, or maybe just with your presence and your human energy. And so today we wanted to, just have a chat about remembering and returning. And I thought about that because we have entered 2026. It's the beginning of the year. It doesn't feel that way because of the global happenings.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be an interesting time to reflect as our first episode for the year, but also, again, globally, what is our experience of that? Yeah, and to just reflect on what does that mean for all of us. So we're going to start with a question we ask all of our guests, right? And we all going to try to answer that.
Okay. We're in this together.
Yes,
We are. And so the first question is, as a remembrance and a return, is what does it mean to be human on this planet in this time?
Wow.
Suddenly we're on the other side. We have to answer this.
Exactly.
It's a very different experience than throwing it to a guest.
Yeah. And when we've asked the question, they go, "Oh, it's a big question." I'm like, "No, just answer it." You know what I mean? But it's actually.
I think the previous guest we had, Dr. Sarah Matchett, took about pause for 20 seconds, and you could feel it when we asked that question. And the answer was obviously very late, which you expected. But as I'm kind of thinking about this now, I still don't really know if I have an answer. If I honestly just sit here and be present with you too, I don't know if I can really answer it in a way that I can articulate it, that it would be understood.
Yeah, I think I feel that too. Like I feel like I have an answer, but I don't have an answer to that, you know?
Yeah.
But I completely feel that.
You feel that?
I was just going to say that it's a feeling.
It is.
And it's a feeling that's beyond words.
Yeah.
And that we feel into it together, because for me, when I start to try and put things into words, and I love words, but for something, then it almost takes away from the essence of what it means. Like there's a gravitas and a sinking into what does it mean? It's like
right.
That's what it means to be human.
Right.
In this moment, in time and space.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's the answer. The rest of us don't need to answer. But I do think it's that. And as we sit here now, I would not have thought that this would be how we experience the question. But it does feel fitting. And I'm glad that it's a feeling as opposed to exactly like you say, words, you know, which does take away from the experience of that.
I will add something to say that conversations I had in December when we had some time off away from work, your job, not really your work, but I had some conversations with especially males in the masculine sense about people in similar life stages to me and what they're enduring and some of their struggles, where there's a lack of community that seems to be very common in a kind of a humane space at this stage, and separation. And I can feel that. I think you can look at it globally, the division. You can see that. So I will say maybe the word that comes to mind is being aware to go out with intentional kindness and empathy for people.
Yes.
I think that's what really hits home for me if I just think about it more deeply.
If you put a word to it.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because for me, I mean, this is going to sound obvious, but the word was presence. And I think that even as you ask that question and as the more I sit with it, the more I think that we probably flooded with all of the external stimuli and then also the internal experience of that and the meeting of that, you know, on the inside. And how do you put that into words and how do you describe what that feels like in the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because when I think about it, I feel like I actually think about the experiences I've had where I've had to come into an acceptance of my humanity.
Yes.
You know, the things that make you just so human. And a lot of that led from doing lots of shadow work and understanding that actually this is just the human story. This is what it's like. And then like embracing, right, all of those things that really often is judged and feels icky to acknowledge about yourself. And then further along the line, how I actually became and am, I believe, such an advocate for my own humanity, but also for others, because I think that when you're in a particular position, publicly, personally, or privately, sometimes you're not given the same space as others to
100%.
show up and present as human. And so, from the denial of my humanity to the acceptance of it, to the advocation.
Yes. Yes.
And the fierce protectiveness I now feel toward my own humanity and others, of course, but just to be able to say no. When I show up here, wherever that is, I get to be human too, just like you,
Yes.
right? And that to me feels like the greatest presence, that I could have found, and rooted myself in.
Yes.
I love that. I could feel that.
Yeah.
I could feel that.
You can feel it. You can so feel that.
You talk about having humanity in spaces. Fortunate enough to attend a work function yesterday. And it doesn't happen often, but you do have these little pockets of conversations outside of work.
Yes.
And, you happen to kind of know where you sometimes gravitate towards people to have more deeper conversations, and you know who those people are. I mean, I'm sure Shaamiela, you and Gila have had those situations in the past, where that's probably why you're sitting here today. But I was just struck by the humanity of someone that was sharing her experience going through her daughter's turning 1 tomorrow. And since she was born, she's had amazing health struggles, like really difficult health struggles. And she's had to endure a lot. And she was telling me that for some other reason, her husband named her daughter, it's a Zulu name, it's called Nkubile. And it means warrior. And kind of like a courageous spirit. And she's saying, Lincoln, whatever I've had to endure this past year and see my daughter, what she's gone through, she's such a fighter. And I think that brought me back to think, like, if I think I have these problems in my life, suddenly you kind of, your humility, your own humility, you brought back to it again, like, are the things that you face, are there really such issues that you have? But I think only when you have community and you're willing to have those open conversations with people, do you realize what people are going through. And that's where you build your empathy and kindness towards others.
Absolutely.
So that conversation, I'm so grateful for that conversation because that brought me back to my own humanity.
Yeah.
But we're not willing to be open to explore those spaces. We never get to experience that.
Yeah. Yeah, we need community. We need other.
Yeah.
And Shami, just linking back to what you were saying about owning your humanity and being protective of it, it also makes me think of a journey that I've had with humanity, but also being human over the last while, maybe the last 10 years, because how often do we hear people saying, I'm only human?
Yes.
Or looking at being human in a negative way.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
And that feeds into a self-fulfilling prophecy that I'm limited in some way, that I'm negative, I cause damage, I'm a blight on the planet, when in actual fact, it is the most phenomenal gift to be able to experience life as a human.
Yes.
So I'm not only human, I am human.
Yes.
And that means, yes, I've got the shadow side, I've got the things that make me feel uncomfortable, and then there's the glorious feelings that maybe make me feel uncomfortable too, but woven together,
Yeah.
it's pure magic.
Yeah.
Because what other being on this planet gets to experience things the way that you do purely because you got to be born in a human form?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and then as you say that, and I think maybe because we're all very I like to think of myself as someone who is in pursuit of that which is life-giving, and I think both of you share that, and we all share that as we sit here. We enjoy living, like we love living, and we're optimistic about life and humanity and our humanness. But immediately, what comes to mind is that, again, the stuff we started off talking about is that the global experience right now. And that's my question, I guess, for the person who's in a war-torn country, who's being deeply dehumanized, who doesn't have a voice and who we'll never know existed, because there's parts of the world we don't even know that this village is named this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Is like, how do those individuals, how do those humans experience being human? Are they allowed to? How connected to their humanity are they? It's that whole thing around words, right? As much as we love words and it describes something, sometimes it just also takes away from the experience and the essence of the being or the thing. So yeah, it's just made me kind of wonder there, you know. Yeah, and it's, I guess, maybe a way of remembering. Yeah, a shared experience, but also a very unique experience for others.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, for the first time in a long time, we actually having a discussion today where I feel like the words don't express the feeling.
Yes.
I think the weight of your words that you just said now on how others may be experiencing things in the world. I don't know why, but I also feel like there's a helplessness on my side. I don't know where it comes from, but it does feel like that. I think the only thing you can really do, and I think, Gila, you mentioned it before we went live now, is to kind of how you manage yourself and how you show up for yourself to others. I mean, I love what you just said. I mean, I don't know if you can repeat that, but I think it's quite fitting what you mentioned before, what's happening in the world and how you show up as an individual and not really what's been thrown at you, really.
Yeah. So I came to this way of trying to understand it and frame it for myself because I have this capacity to sit in very deep wells of sadness.
Yeah.
And I feel at times it feels like I'm feeling the sadness of the whole world. And then I feel like I can't do anything with this. And I feel guilty because I'm not in a war-torn country and I have all this ridiculous privilege around me. So then it's, okay, so how do I make sense of this so that I have agency and I can actually help myself and the people around, or not just the people, the non-human beings around me as well. So it's looking at the life I'm living, what's happening around me, what's happening in the world, and seeing if I can flip it from this is happening to me and this is happening to us, or we chose this on some deep level.
Yeah.
We chose this as a species, as a collective, to evolve, to grow, to learn things for ourselves, to teach each other lessons. And how can I be most useful in the learning and the growing and the evolving as opposed to sitting and feeling helpless and a victim, I guess would be the remembering part then comes into remembering why we're here, remembering that we need community, remembering that we are not isolated, although the system is designed to make us feel that way. We are so deeply connected to everything on the planet.
Yeah.
And the more for me that I've started to really tune into that, the more it's like, how did you not see this before? How could you have been acting in a way that perpetuated this feeling of isolation where you're connected to the plants, to the animals, to the person next door, the person on the other side of the planet? Everything is connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's almost as you saying that, and can sort of link to what Lincoln was saying about the helplessness and maybe even a powerlessness, you know, that we feel. I almost feel like when you describe it that way, that's a validation of those human beings, because it truly is a helpless and a powerless feeling. And I know that doesn't necessarily help them. You know what I mean? But there is something validating about being able to say, as a human who knows, you know, there are people who are experiencing this and that you exist over there and I don't know you, but there's something about being able to say, I feel completely helpless and powerless that feels validating. You know, I don't know. I'm saying that from this position, exactly as you've pointed out, which is quite privileged. And even though the aircon could be up higher, it's cool in here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's from this position. And I think I'm wondering about that because we speak about the empathy aspect, right?
Yeah.
And even what you were saying, Gila, I think that's it. It's like, you know, sometimes even as we sit here now and as we started this conversation, how there's a wordlessness that's occurring in the room as we sit with it, that feels, again, like a deep validation of something. And maybe it's also just about sitting with someone, you know, and sitting. I mean, we think about these mini meditation practices where you can sit and you can just become this global feeler
Mm-hmm.
where you just sit and you feel and you go, I'm going to be with you here.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit in silence and I'm going to acknowledge all beings on this earth and just go, I'm here with you. I'm remembering you. Right. I won't forget you, because that's what's difficult. And I think in the last couple of years, and this is the part that makes me really tearful, is that you watch this happen on social media. We're tuning into it every day when you open up your page, whatever you use. And if the least I can do is not look away,
Yes.
then that's what I'm going to do, or repost or whatever it is, or use my voice. But I'm hoping, that there's some form of validation that we do remember you, and we do, it's in our hearts and our minds all the time. Because that's certainly how I have approached it. And so one of the practices I've started doing on social media particularly is, because we know it's a carousel of what will you get next? And you go from sad to laughing to, we've spoken about that before. But one of the things I've tried to do lately is when something really, just deeply touching and moving and horrendous even comes across, is I actually just stop. I don't scroll. Sometimes I'll even leave the app. But it's my small way of just being with it.
Yes.
That I refuse to actually just move on to the next thing, onto the next feeling, or to just leave this feeling that I'm sitting with, because it's very hard. And I want to acknowledge that, and I'm not saying that everybody else should do the same thing.
Yeah.
But there is something about that feels, that there's some kind of allyship in that, or some kind of human feeling and sensing. And so, I mean,
there's a reverence in doing that.
Yeah.
Reverence for the shared human experience that we can't do anything about, or it feels that way.
Yeah.
You are experiencing somewhere on that different part of the planet the worst side of humanity there is.
Yes.
But I can hold and reverence the sacredness of the fact that you are alive.
Yes.
And that I see you in some way.
Yes.
That pause, that moment of, I'm not going to let the system distract me. And I think that is also part of the remembering, for me, is remembering that I'm more than just a consumer. I'm more than just a number. I am part of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah.
If I think about what I've seen transpired, not just in my own life in circles, but what's happening in the world, is kind of people chasing more significance when it's coming at a cost of ourselves at times. And so I've asked myself the question this year, what is it that I'd like to move forward towards? And what it comes down to is kind of remembering where I came from. And for me, it's a spiritual thing, it's a prayer thing, but it's about really choosing to love God and love others. And then obviously kind of to lose your own life to gain it. And that's kind of losing the ego. When it's really hard to love others in your spaces, you still choose to love.
Yes.
And so this year, I think it's more about a quite costly love, a boldness that doesn't say, I want to be seen for my deeds, but I want to be remembered for the love that I showed for people around me. So that to me this year, I think if I'm choosing, is just to love God, love others, and lose part of myself to find myself.
Wow. That feels like I've been reminded of this is actually what it's about, because it does feel like that. I mean, that's like a massive ego clearing, if you think about it exactly like that and approaching it that way. Yeah, I think towards the end of last year, what feels, what's resonating with me about what you're saying is that I think it was at the retreat, the breathwork retreat, where as soon as I got into the car, the person I went with, I was just immediately struck with this idea of a mirror, right? And just sort of this thought or this feeling that sort of just descended, and it was like every human being is your mirror. And I was like, okay, where did that come from? I wanted to pretend that I didn't ask for that. So I was, and then it actually just helped me, because it helped me center and root every single time I wanted to, go off into the story about what this could mean and what, that could mean. And that's what it feels like. It feels like, there's a humility in being able to see and sit across from another human being and see yourself.
Yes.
In them, and acknowledge deeply that, you have that too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was really helpful, and it's continued. And so I don't know, I feel like I experience love differently now. And you spoke about love, right? And I think that happened when I started accepting my humanity, right? And my humanness, because exactly like what you were saying, Gila, about the gloriousness of being human, and that we get to have this complicated, complex experience, and sometimes very simple and mundane, but that I get to see that in another human being, and I get to be awake and attuned to the things that make them particularly unique and individual. And so now that's just such a part of the love that I experience with anybody, is like, wow, look at how your eyes crinkle when you laugh. Or like, look at how, you get distracted when something happens. Or there's just like a different kind of love that I experience now. And there's like it's a curiosity, but there's a joy in being able to acknowledge that and see that in someone and know that it also exists in me.
Yes, that's beautiful.
That is beautiful. So I was fortunate enough to be without a phone for the first week in January.
Amazing.
Which was an amazing experience. When you tell others, they look at me like, are you on something? Like, what are you on that you're saying is an amazing experience? The amazing experience is, and we always speak about, was the universe trying to show me something to set me up for the year. And I remember for the first 2 nights when the family went to bed, I was like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Because you didn't go and scroll.
Your hands are unoccupied.
So I felt this kind of, I don't know, nervous tension.
Yeah.
And we spoke about it before, Shama, I've told you. And by day 3, I started feeling none of those feelings really. I started feeling like, wow. I started noticing my dog more. Like he wanted to go for a walk now. And I'm like, hey boy, I'm up for it. Let's do this, whatever.
Right.
And I had little moments in between where I was a lot more present, that I'm like, I want more of this going forward. So whether it was the universe or not trying to show me something, it set me up in such a nice way because, okay, let me take it back to December. So in December,
backstory.
Yeah, backstory. I came through the year and I told Shami, I think towards November, I was feeling very tired and drained. A lot had happened last year, a lot of good things too, a lot of changes, and I embraced it all. This podcast started, and this is a space where it's really a restful space for us, and I love doing this podcast.
Yes.
But so I got to a space where I just felt a little bit mentally drained after the year. And I think the first week of the holidays was kind of like just kind of coming back to myself again in a way after what's happened through the year. But I kind of leading up to that, I had started feeling a bit of things in the house, in the dynamic of feeling like a bit of debit and credits. And I didn't want to feel that way. And it kind of brought me back after about 2 weeks of holidays when I started thinking about, well, how do I want to show up for the people that I care about next year? And I realized that if I'm going to go into the year performative and thinking if I do something for someone, I expect something else in return, that resentment, that unforgiveness we spoke about in the episode.
Yes.
And someone reminded me, so it says sometimes you will give 20% to a situation, but your partner might give 80%.
Yes.
But that's just a season. It's a long season of life that you go through someone.
Yeah.
And it was such a useful conversation because I now going to the spaces going where can I make things easier? Instead of going I have to do this and I feel but don't you see what I'm doing?
Yes.
Yes.
And I think it was so useful for me because suddenly it's about letting go of the ego a lot more.
Yes.
What do I need? What can I gain from this? So I'm in a space now where I'm how do I make this work for the dynamic and not just for me?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh.
That's so reminiscent of understanding that we all create this ecosystem,
Yes.
right? And if we can think of the home as the ecosystem and the relationship as an ecosystem, then we take a lot more responsibility,
Yeah.
right? Because we all are responsible for what we bring into that ecosystem,
Yes.
what we leave behind, or maybe even what we don't bring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Half
You
the
know what I
time,
mean?
What we don't bring.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that works from the micro level all the way out actually to what we're talking about on how we feel helpless on a global level,
Yes.
what we bring or don't bring. So as simple as choosing to have or not to have a conversation about something
Yes.
it's what we bring and what we don't bring.
Yeah.
And the responsibility that it comes with our humanity.
Exactly that. And acknowledging someone else's humanity. I think in what you were saying, Lincoln, wow, that's really,
Sure.
I love where this is taking me. It's like
I also remember leading up to, I think it was November last year, where one of the colleagues came to me and they wanted to do a campaign with quite a good cause, Women for Change. And we tried to see where we could get involved in that. And I never really read up about it prior to that. Anyway, I went to do some research and saw the videos online and many male voices, prominent male voices getting behind and backing the campaign. But it made me realize on a very micro level in my own household, and Shaamiela knows this quite well, I'm trying to change the templates for my boys. So what is the best thing that I can do in that small environment where I can show a different template to my boys in how I engage with their mom? Because that is the first point of reference in your house where they see that. So like if you can realize it's like, what can I do? I feel helpless. Well, actually in your own environment,
yes.
how you treat your spouse is a very good indication of a respect level that you're showing towards someone that they look up to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
I always say this about you, but I'm so grateful that you are the human that you are in this world. But that your form is a man. So, your form is a man and that you're that kind of man and that you've been given sort of this mandate, by God himself to raise these two boys with that kind of consciousness. And it's interesting because I feel like that's something I think women feel exasperated at going and saying, it's actually as simple as that. If you change the way that you speak, behave treat just the women in your lives, that shifts everything. And that's your practice ground.
Very true.
Exactly.
And I know that this is way more complex than that,
Sure.
considering we in South Africa,
Yeah.
right, and what gender-based violence, the statistics around that. But there is something about that where we just actually want to be seen as human.
Yeah.
Just have our humanity acknowledged. I'm sure it's the same for men.
Yeah.
Which is that, because you know how it is now on the internet. It's very like women this and men that, and stuff like high value. Are we kidding?
Yeah.
Like to describe a human, we all high value, like inherently.
Sure.
You know what I
Yes,
mean? You are
exactly.
inherently high value. Yeah, it just made me think of that. So there's almost like, there's you've been given like something really big to
I think
navigate.
in the past I saw it as a bit of a weight, because before you go into fatherhood, you can kind of like sit in isolation and not really deal with it.
Yes.
I mean, kind of like, I'll manage it, no one really see.
Yes.
But suddenly you're now faced with two humans, you're now a mirror.
Yes.
And now you realize, okay, I'm carrying the weight of this, and there's no way that I can really do this with them, because I know that my responsibility is not for them to feel dependent on me when they leave one day. Is that they are individual adults going into this world, that they're kind to others, that they're not taking that template and really just not breaking a curse in a way. So I think for now it's like embracing that responsibility, but there's a sense of like, I don't know how to really call it, of an acceptance that I take upon myself, being grateful for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a gift.
It's a gift.
Yes.
But I feel in many ways, like I say, I feel there's an awakening that I'm so grateful for. I know, Shaamiela, you speak about these periods you go through. We spoke about in the episodes, the 7-year cycle.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And I feel that for the longest time, I've been sort of grappling with all these things in the background, and it kind of feels like it's come to light and it's time to really live it out. And I'm so grateful for this podcast because I tell Shaamiela, along with my own healing, this has been a wonderful source of that. But if I can share these experiences, practical experiences, and one person can gain from it and go, hey, that's quite interesting. Maybe something I didn't really think about, but it's maybe curious. And I think that's all these conversations really are. You know, to make someone think about, okay, I didn't really engage, but let me see where this takes me.
Yes.
Yeah. So listening to what you're saying about the responsibility you have with your boys to model to them different ways of being.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know how your relationship with yourself has changed. Because I'm curious.
Wow, I think for the first time in my life, I probably feel that I really matter in what I do. I think in the past I felt I had to go in spaces and be quiet. But now I feel I can walk into spaces and be bold and that your voice matters. And I think if you can feel that way, that you feel that you matter in people's lives, I think you can go into spaces confident, even if you don't have it all together. Go with what you have right now, and the rest will make sense as you move forward. But I think there's a sense of me understanding the deeper meaning that I have a big role to play. It's not over. So I think that is, I'm grateful for it. I think that's what I really have to say about it. Thanks for that question, by the way.
Yes, I was also I was thinking the same thing.
My brain is percolating in all different directions because I was thinking about when we were discussing remembering and returning and the difference between individual remembering and the collective.
Yes.
And as you're speaking, I'm thinking about the collective remembering.
Same.
It feels like we're being called
as
a collective to also remember that we do matter.
Yes.
Every single one of
100%.
us.
Yes.
And whether it's because we are here to do big impact from what social media tells us we're doing, or it's because you smile at somebody and that turns their day around and they make different choices in that day because they feel seen for half a moment by a stranger.
Wow.
We all matter, and it's so easy to forget that.
Wow, that's beautiful. It really is. I think my faith keeps reminding me that significance isn't really about what we chase. It's something we discover when we love God. And for me, that's God, obviously. For someone else, it could look very different. But to come to that realization and to know that responsibility that I now have to live out, like I said before, I don't know how to express it anymore, but I'm grateful for it. I'm really grateful for it, And I'm grateful to have different voices like this around me. I'm grateful for the friendships that I have with people like Shaamiela, because, you know, there have been many conversations like this we've had over 20 odd years that have, like you said, have made me see a different point of view on something. Maybe I wouldn't get stuck in my own story, where many of us do. You know, it's someone to help you out of that, just to give you a light and go like, oh, actually, maybe I am stuck in my own story a bit. So it's very insightful to have different voices around you. And that happens in community. It only happens when you're in community. So that to me is, again, realizing that I have to put myself in a position, even if it's uncomfortable for some people, because we all have to socialize, whether you want to accept that responsibility or not. But there's actually a meaningful gain from that we don't always see. But afterwards, I mean, how many times have you gone to an occasion, you go, I don't feel like it. I don't really feel like dressing up. And when you come back, I'm not saying every time, but there are some situations you go like, actually, I wasn't really looking forward, but that was actually quite cool. I really enjoyed that. So I don't know if anyone can relate, but this very often happens to me.
Often.
Thank you for the reminder of because I do think that, and as we reflect on the collective, I'm thinking about, like you mentioned it, you know, what are we returning to as a collective, you know, because there's remembering and then there's returning, because we can remember and still not go back.
Yes.
or come back or return. Sometimes it's difficult to remember. You know, sometimes it's hard to remember. Sometimes it's even difficult to return.
Yeah.
You know, because like a big part of this is also, yes, the individual experience informs the collective and the collective experience informs the individual experience. And I guess the interplay between those two. But there is something about when everybody's immersed in the work at the same time.
Yes.
And so we're leading up to Ramadan. I often think about like how sometimes it's easier. We'll often say that because if you don't fast throughout the Ramadan, for women who menstruate, you fall in those days outside of Ramadan. And every single woman will tell you it's so much more difficult. And I think that speaks to the collective because we're all engaged in the same thing.
Yeah.
And there's a light that brings. I mean, energetically, that's kind of how that works.
Yes.
Is that whatever you're engaged in as a collective, it becomes easier for the individual, right? And for the collective.
Yeah.
And we see it now even in protests across the world. There's a solidarity that you feel that's very, again, unexplainable when you watch that.
Yes.
You know. But there's a return to something. I don't know what that something is. I mean, I'd like to think it's our humanity collectively, and that we are fully rooted in our humanness, and that we protect it.
Yes.
You know.
So as you're speaking and you're talking and feeling into the words and what you're saying about returning to our humanity, I'm also thinking, linking to what you said about losing your phone and how liberating it was. And so for me, the two, they're almost tied together in when we lose our devices and we step away from technology, we come back to our bodies. And that is actually where our humanity is. This technology that is our body, and this is how we actually connect to each other, is person to person, body to body, not on a phone. We think we're connecting. But we're up here in the mental space, feeding into an algorithm. And the more that we come back to being here and sitting in whatever I'm feeling and connecting with whatever is around me from a body experience, the more I can work out what it is I'm returning to. I can't return to something I'm not embodied in.
I love
So good.
so much. Wow.
And it's uncomfortable when you're not used to being in your body.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Don't want to be here. I don't want to sit with this.
Yeah.
No, not with this vessel. Don't tell me to go anywhere but this vessel.
Exactly.
That's with me all the time, 24/7. But that's so profound. Again, this is the word, deeply feel that. It's like the theme running through this experience as we sit here today and talk. But I love the reminder. Thank you for helping us kind of almost locate that, you know.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you watched the Grammys.
No.
I saw clips, but no.
I think sort of political commentary from people that won awards was very welcomed from some people. Look, I'm not going to say I agree with every speech made and kind of we understand, you know, how that happens. But I do think there's something about people that use platforms to speak about things that are necessarily meant to be spoken about. And again, like I say, everyone has their motives. I understand that. I think it's a good thing that certain people do speak up, that have voices. For the people like Shaamiela, you always saying for people that don't really have voices to speak up. And I mean, one person as such was Trevor Noah at the awards.
Yes.
Yeah, he was the MC. I think the final year. It's the 6th year now hosting the Grammys.
Oh,
6 years.
Okay.
And he made a few interesting comments, obviously witty as always. But he made a few political comments and it wasn't received very well. He received a couple of kind of lawsuit threats afterwards.
I can imagine.
Yes. By a very powerful global leader. I don't even have to go there.
Yes, when you rage against the machine.
Yeah, 100%. But I love that because it doesn't just drive the narrative of Western media. It's suddenly someone that's kind of more human.
Yes.
And now suddenly they throw a different mix in there. And suddenly you go, oh, okay. So I love it when you get a reset quickly. You're like, okay, wow. Yes, that hit me different.
Yeah.
But that's important. That's really important.
It is.
So I'm grateful for people that have voices that use it, however that lands with you, but it gives you a different perspective.
And it's not performative. So
That's
linking
right.
back to what you were saying about thinking how you want to go into this year.
That's right.
And responsibility. So for me, I think if you are in a position where people listen to you,
Yes.
you have a responsibility
Yes.
to use your words.
100%.
And when people don't, it speaks very loudly.
Yes.
And then you look at what they choose to speak about and what they don't, and which causes they choose to mention and which
Yes.
causes they don't.
Yes.
But you have a responsibility to use your voice, absolutely. Yeah.
I agree. And I'm often struck by that. I'm often struck by, wow, this is something I sit with all the time, is that when an organization, an NGO, whatever it is you are, whatever form this takes, the collective effort takes that you're doing, and you speak about human rights or humanity and it's selective, I struggle with that. Because you watch how, exactly to your point, Gila, how selective it is. It's obviously very frustrating and difficult to sit with, because how connected are you then to that word that you throw around and that you use, and then the word obviously being performative versus real, you know, and it's something you can feel.
Yes.
Whoever is using their platform, whoever the voice is, you can feel when it's real, you know, and that's, I guess, a bit of a guidance for me. But also, exactly like you say, the mirror is the responsibility I have, you know, because I might not have the same platform and be as publicly known, but I have the same responsibility.
Yes.
You know, and that's what I try to remember. You know, we have a podcast that is named The Human Story.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a huge responsibility. I was the one who said, let's do I was like, I think we should call it The Human Story.
Yeah.
And then I was like, have you thought about what that means? You know what I mean? And obviously we don't represent the whole of humanity, but when you choose that word and you choose to say it's about the human story, then there is a responsibility, you know, that we sit with.
It's those wealth and array of emotions that are just thrown open. And however you tend to take that on or speak about it, we welcome it.
Yes.
And therefore, when we put it out, we welcome whichever way it lands with you.
Yes.
I think I read a story earlier this week, and it was so interesting. This guy was literally speaking about how people feel the need to create content these days. Let's say one format is podcasting, but how they feel there's this anxiety to create content just to be relevant.
Yes.
Instead of creating content, he used the example of, I think, Leo Tolstoy, where it's like, what's the word he used? But it's like, it's generational content that will land with you in 100 years' time from now.
Yes.
And I love that. He says, because like Shaamiela, you mentioned now, you can feel that.
Yes, you can
You can feel it when someone's creating content out of anxiety, and actually when they want to make a difference for the love of what they're doing.
Yes.
And I think that is, and that'll always be, I think what Shaamiela would want to do is to ensure that when we come and sit here, it's not a performative function again.
Yeah.
It's really just saying like, this is some of the human things that we sit with, that we cause a strife in our lives. And for you to know that you should also consider some of this, because it's going to help you in your journey. So I found that very interesting, because it helped me realize that, Shaamiela, we always speak about this, is about the human story. This is it's not a fad that we're just doing. This is someone that people coming along this journey with us through our own journey. So we want to form a community of people that say like, I kind of like know where you might be at, I'm similar space, and I'm going to go with you on this journey. It's not like on social media tells you, if you do this one thing, it's going to save you.
Yes.
When actually it's more a system of collective things, like you were saying, Gila, earlier about nature and everything else. And Shaamiela reminds me every time about nature. And I love that, because again, like I say, for me, that's coming from a different angle. And the time that I spend with Shaamiela now, it's been an awakening for me to realize there's not one thing if people are going through healing that fixes you.
Yeah.
It's a culmination of different perspectives For some people, it's meditation. For others, it's breathwork. For some, it's prayer. For some, it's therapy. But it's a combination of what works for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I kind of veered off the point a bit.
No.
But what I was really trying to say is
Brilliant.
that when you do stuff for the right intention, it lands differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
What you were saying about this being the human story, and it's not necessarily the whole human story.
Yeah.
Yes.
But also just in the fact that you are two gloriously, perfectly imperfect humans
Yes.
engaging, it makes it the whole human story, because that's the human story.
Yes. Mm.
And the cognizance
Got
of
you.
that you're part of a collective.
Yes. Right. Wow. Thank you for that. That's
Well,
something to think about.
Yeah, I love that, Gila, because Shami, we've spoken about this before. This podcast has gone out to various parts of the world.
Yes. Do you want to update us on the stats?
Yeah, so basically we're about 20 episodes away from 1,000 downloads.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Well done, you.
The episode on
you.
rest is sitting about 280 episode downloads, the
Oh, wow.
most by
Still.
far.
That
and
speaks loudly.
Still
It
growing.
speaks loud.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll speak about that. But I think to say it's gone out to North America, Europe. Yeah, it's so I think what you're trying to say is that this is our human experience, and perfect. We invite people from all parts of the world and communities, because the human experience is universal.
Yes.
It's not
Exactly.
just, I mean, context-wise, you speak in Cape Town, South Africa, what we're doing now, but the emotional experience is universal.
Yes.
And therefore, I feel that whatever we're speaking about today and whatever topic is that no matter where you're in the world, in your skin, you can feel what we're saying.
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. It is. That's such a, and it's so reminding me of, yeah, thank you to both of you. But it's so reminding me of, first of all, how much I love being human and the great privilege I feel that comes with that. Yeah, and I'm thinking, I mean, we all do work with humans. Gila and I in different capacities to Lincoln. But all of our work, our jobs require human interaction and human space holding.
Yeah.
Right. Holding space for other people. And so, yeah, I've just in my own life, I've gotten to a point where there's such a surrender to the human experience for me that's all I want to do. I just want to be human alongside you.
Yes.
I want to be human alongside my friends, my family, whoever, my clients. Like, I just want to sit across from you and be another human being who, is willing to sit with you in it,
Yes.
and be with you in it and to listen, and that feels like a major relief when I think about it and feel into it. It's like that great exhale,
Yeah.
of, okay, if all we do is sit with each other and be human, then that's enough. That feels like it's enough, as opposed to all these tenuous things that our ego is hinged on,
Yes.
and you spoke about that word comes to mind because the ego in itself, which is really beautiful,
It has its place.
it
Ironically.
does, right? Because it just leads you to these places and really helps you uncover that shadow. That again is so much a part of the human experience. Yeah, it's a profound, again, all of these things, these parts of ourselves that's amalgamated in this body, as Gila, reminded us.
Gila, I want to return the favor, the question you asked me early on.
Yes.
Seeing that you work in palliative care and, you obviously work with people in different life stages, kind of life-threatening illnesses. Has there ever been someone that's shared with you or your observation or your experience where you would say that their view on the human experience maybe changed on where they were getting to that point? And you observing perhaps maybe, if it were that case, maybe the final couple of weeks of someone's life where you see maybe in that experience that it changed the way that they viewed the experience of life?
That is a big question.
That is a big
That
question.
is a big question. And actually, if I think of some of the beautiful souls I've been privileged enough to journey alongside, what happens more often isn't a change. It's more of a consolidation and a concentration of who they have been or their life experience all along. And then it comes to this moment. So there's one woman I think of, I only knew her in the last 8 weeks of her life.
Okay.
And she was so at peace with dying, and she had the most gorgeous celebration for her birthday, knowing that it was going to be her last birthday. And the sense that I got was that this is how she's been her whole life, but coming towards death,
Yeah.
it enhanced that side of her. She became more joyous and more committed to radiating love to the people around her and letting them do that back to her, even though she was exhausted and in pain.
You.
So that has been more my experience. So the people who are anxious or angry, there will be snippets of acceptance.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been my experience where that just then suddenly changes. Maybe there's a little bit of peace towards the end where the ego lets go. Yeah. But they become more of who they've been all along, I think. Yeah.
Justina, I guess it's got a lot to do if you understand this is not the end of your journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that'll make a big difference, yeah.
Yeah, it does. I think also, maybe some of the change happens if, for example, somebody has dedicated a lot of time to work and is, like in your case, as a dad.
Yeah.
And hasn't spent a lot of time with his kids, although that would be where he'd want to be. And then found out, actually, I've got a life-limiting illness. My time is now slipping out of my hands. And then he becomes more present as a father. So it's not changing who he was. It just redirected.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So if he was not a present dad, had no intention of being a present dad, it's unlikely that the focus would have shifted onto his kids.
Yes.
But it just realigned him back to where he needed to be.
Got you. So
A remembering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that answer just reinforces what I'm going through and what I, would like to achieve with my kids. Yeah, that's also beautiful. I love that.
It is. I'm also thinking about, I don't know, like I'm not sure how this fits into the conversation, but it really feels important as someone who has a voice and, a platform to speak about this, because I do feel like this is a bit of I want to say diversion from the full human experience, which is that we now live in a world, and this is, obviously very informed by my work and the people I work with, my clients, but also just observing, right? Is that there's a lot of pathologizing that's currently happening in the world.
Yes, slap a label on it.
Absolutely. And then what?
Exactly. Great.
Please tell me. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Got you.
And then what? And then what? And then what? So there's a lot of that. And I'm bringing that up because so much of what we pathologize is actually very human.
Yes.
And I'm often struck by that when I meet someone new, a new client, or maybe it's even an old client, and we talk about something, and the response might be one of judgment towards themselves, or one where they, that's so wrong, that's so bad of me. And I'm like, no, actually, because they look to you to go, okay, tell me the label, right? And then we're going to talk about how to fix it. And I'm like, no, actually, that's just human.
Yes.
There's no label for that feeling or that experience or that very natural response you had to someone.
Yes.
Or the fact that sometimes, you default to a bad behavior, if it's even a bad behavior or a particular behavior. But there's a lot of that I often feel disconnects us from our humanity, where we're so obsessed with the labeling and identifying with something, that, okay, so this is how I present. This is my human.
Gotcha.
My human has ... I'm not dismissing what that means for your life.
Sure.
I want to be clear on that.
Yeah.
I'm not dismissing your experience of your own humanity because of that, right? And whatever you come with. But there is, beneath all of that, in mindfulness, we speak about the sky will exist forever
Yes.
until this planet does what it needs to do, right? And the clouds.
Yes.
Right, the clouds. But to understand that those are clouds that are there, and as soon as they move, you'd be able to see the sky again. And that we lose sight of it because we focus so much on the clouds. And that's what it feels like. It feels like I'm so concerned with improving myself.
Yes.
Because that's the other thing. There's an obsession with being healed.
Yeah.
There's no
Yes.
such thing. I've said this before, and I'll
Yes.
say it again. There's no such thing. We are on this journey of evolving. You don't even have to say healing.
Yeah.
You can just say evolving as a human being.
Yes.
But there is this stuntedness that the obsession with these labels, I guess, and the pathologizing of very, very human behavior and human experience and human feeling
Yeah.
that disconnects us as well. That I'm also seeing, disconnects us from our humanity.
Very much so.
Yeah.
As something that needs to be fixed. That's it. Maybe this is what we're being called to remember and to return to, is to the sitting. It's like sitting around the proverbial campfire and just being human in whatever guise that is. And remembering that at the base of it, we are all that sky.
Yes. Yes.
And we all have different clouds and weather patterns
100%.
and that connects us all.
Yeah.
And we need to remember for ourselves that is who I am at my core, this beautiful self,
Yeah.
having a human experience.
Yes.
And if I can sit with my own human experience, I can sit with your human experience, and I can have deep compassion
That's it.
for how you are experiencing
100%.
being human and not take it so personally.
Exactly.
Because I say that and laugh hysterically because it's so easy to take it personally. Like, how could you do that to me?
Yeah.
But in those pauses where I can exhale into what you just did has absolutely nothing to do with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just as gloriously, I'll say it
Yeah.
again, gloriously and perfectly human as you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we can one day sit and laugh about this.
Yes.
Maybe
Yeah.
not now because I don't want to look at you. But that's the point, is to remember that
Yeah.
we're actually here to be imperfect, because how boring would it be?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Whole lot of perfect,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
There would be
individuals.
no evolving.
No,
We'd be like fake plants,
Absolutely.
which are a
Horrendous.
travesty.
Absolutely.
So I think two things just to add. Shama, you saying about so much has been pathologized these days, slap a label in. I do think that the whole word of disconnection is so true, because how often do we see social media influencers acting as like really professionals in that field, giving advice, going reading up on something and really like presenting it so well, like they're the expert embody that, and
Right.
giving that advice out. So I think there's so much information out there which is really damaging to people
Yes.
because there's no context on that.
Yep.
Yes.
And I think that plays a big role. So I think the whole fact of social media does add to that pathologizing, because I can relate to that. That person said, yes, I'm that. So you have to label yourself. So I think part of the fact of, I do understand that, that in itself, but I do feel that adds to the whole thing of pathologizing. That people say, I can relate to it. I think I've got that. Like, you know what I mean?
I agree with you. I do think that social media is the greatest instigator of pathologizing language,
Yeah.
Yes.
and how we've all just sort of latched onto it, and so, I mean, I might have said this before, but I'll sometimes have clients come with, a carousel of, posts that they saw on social media, and then I'll say, okay, so let's contextualize that,
Yes.
because that's exactly what it is that we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
But unless you contextualize that, it's impersonal. You need to personalize by
100%.
going, how does this affect me? And how does this, again, affect my human?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And how much of that stuff listed on there is actually human?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Got you.
I mean, and I think there's something which is not simple. I was about to say simple. It's not simple. I'm thinking about something like anxiety. We were created with anxiety. You know what I mean? There isn't if you don't have anxiety, you wouldn't be human.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the very existence of your anxiety is what makes you human. Again, these are degrees to which people are challenged by,
Yes.
you know,
100%.
an anxious experience or in their body. But there's also like, you know, okay, so this is the thing that's going to make you dig deeper as a human.
Yes.
This is the thing that's going to make you stretch. This is going to be part of that path of evolving. You have anxiety along for the ride.
Yes.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And like what I always say is best you befriend it.
Exactly. Smile
100%.
and wave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Got you.
And it's similar with other stuff too. Befriend it because you're actually way better off journeying with that thing, right? Or this label or this experience by being in relation with
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Being able to relate to it and say, okay, I get it. I see why you show up, how you show up, what it does, how it dysregulates me. What do I need? You know, it really does take you down that I guess that path.
Yeah. I agree. I always bring it back to you were talking about, you know, how do you experience joy without knowing the suffering that exists in the world too?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I guess in life, it's kind of the same thing. How can we ever find true joy if we don't have the opposite experience of suffering?
Exactly.
So we've got to experience the multitude of emotions to be able to go on either factor to understand that nothing works in isolation. To experience the euphoria of one, you have to experience the other.
Yeah.
And I think so often we just want to experience the joy of life. But to understand what makes us really human is to experience these emotions. And I find people don't want to sit with emotions.
Yes.
They don't want to.
Yep.
Which is at the heart of
Of
being human,
Yes. That we're here to
to feel.
feel it all.
Yes.
all feel it.
Yeah. And we live in in a culture
Yeah.
of quick fixes and throw a tablet at it and make it go away. And as you were talking about anxiety, I'm thinking we do that with physical things too.
Yeah.
So how many ads do you see coming up for winter where you need to get the flu vaccine? When in actual fact, getting flu, I'm not discounting people who have different immune responses
Sure.
who do get really, really sick. But for the most part, it's almost like a rite of passage.
Yes.
That every couple of years you'll
Yes.
get flu
Got you.
Yes.
and your body does something with it.
Exactly.
And it's also why have I got, what have I maybe not been doing? Or is it because my child has brought this home and now
Yes.
we're upgrading collectively
There we
as a
go.
family? But there's a purpose to these things. We're evolved to have illness, to then work through it, to rest, for our body's immune system to upgrade. And if we throw a tablet at it, we don't give ourselves the opportunity to have that part of the human experience, which is what we're here for, and it's what our bodies are designed for. So we're doing ourselves a disservice,
Yeah.
really.
I think I kind of wanted, as we kind of look towards wrapping up, maybe just share the conversation to kind of veer in one direction to say that there is a lot of change happening globally in the world at this stage. And I think how you adapt to that determine how you probably process emotions.
Yes.
So I think, a lot of what's taking place, and yes, we can say maybe it's just more exposure, more media, but it's about recognition of patterns that have happened in the past and history, and just kind of being open to change. I think change happens inevitably. It's
Yes.
part of life. There's this whole talk about AI and how that, and there's obviously various theories about that. But I think if you realize that, it's just about embracing change for what it is and just being present with it and kind of seeing where it takes you. Because if it leads you just as thinking of it as fear, it's going to stop and stunt you from actually growing. So I think I just wanted to kind of end with that too.
I'm going to take this into the body because I noticed that at the beginning when we started talking, I needed to clear my throat quite a bit, which obviously meant I needed to say something. Or there was something particular I needed to say, and I think I said it somewhere along the line because it's gone now. I don't need to clear my throat anymore. But also as we're speaking, as we sat down and started the conversation, it was very clear that this would be a feeling exercise today, or a feeling conversation, but also just like energetically. I've actually like had that experience of like what you would call cold shivers a couple of
Yes,
times. And I'm noting it and I'm going, whoa, okay, this is real. And it's such a profound and heartwarming affirmation of the collective human experience.
Yes.
And what happens when people sit down with intentionality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or sit together with intentionality and the connectedness, you know, that creates and you experience. And I'm so struck by that and grateful for it and grateful that I can feel that. Because that's often what I feel grateful for, is that I can have an awareness that that's happening.
Yes.
And to be able to name it and say, that's what that is. So I'm quite aware of that as we speak about, you know, these feelings of powerlessness and helplessness. This is the affirmation for me because, you know, it does make me, it's difficult for me to sit with those feelings. And you were speaking about that deep sadness. And that's it, you know, we're all energetic beings. Some of us are a lot more attuned to it. And so Gila and I often speak about that, you know, our experience of feeling deeply into kind of just the earth's experience, you know, and being in this world. And those are maybe big feelings that some people, that's how they describe it. It's very intense for me sometimes as well. But I would not change that.
No.
You know, it's not easy. But I would not change that because, again, I can be awake to these moments. And it's, so it feels like an answer to perhaps a question as I was reflecting around, you know, how do we remember and help other people kind of know that we're with them, you know. And I'm thinking that's, I mean, I see it at the end of last year that I feel like I've returned to a sense of community, you know, and I think that's clearly like an intentional position, but also a place I'd like to go more often and be in more often. Yeah. And to feel into that collective experience. Yeah. And I'm actually just thinking that we, you know, whatever practices we have, that is part of how do you practice remembering and returning? Maybe that's a question we can leave our listeners and our audiences with, is how do you practice remembering, and then, you know, what does the return look like? Yeah. And also, and I guess be clear on what it is you're returning to, you know. And then also what I wanted to just also pose, and one last question to our listeners, and is also, what are you remembering so that you don't return to it and repeat?
Yes.
Because there are some stuff that we have to remember, right? And we have to remember it so that we don't return to it.
Yes, that's
right, and we don't repeat, whether that's a cycle, a loop. Yeah.
Yes. And that veers off into a whole different conversation.
Indeed.
That we'll have to save for another time.
Yeah.
I think, Gila, I'd just like to say from my side, before we actually got in the podcast, I met you. We talk about energy, and I know you guys are much more experienced about this.
Yes.
But just from kind of sitting here now, I feel so at peace of this conversation.
Yeah.
It's a real nice peace that I have.
Yeah.
It's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
But also, it was lovely, the energy that you gave when I met you. But I could feel it today too. So thank you for just coming to share your human experience with us today.
Yes.
It was really lovely. I really appreciate it. And a different voice, I think, is always good.
Yes,
a different perspective. And I loved your insights. I really loved your insights. Thank you so much. So yeah, I think for myself, I'd just like to say thank you.
Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts, feelings, experiences?
All the feelings.
All of it.
I just want to thank both of you for opening space for me in this unfolding human story podcast that you have. And it's a humbling honor to be invited into the conversation. As daunting as it might have felt initially, you're both so easy to talk to, and there is this resonance in this space. And even though we might we do experience life differently, there's a common thread that weaves between us, which I guess is the human story.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful to be one small thread in this conversation as you guys unpack it going forward. So thank you for having me.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're a big thread. Small thread. I think, thank you so much for coming. We've taken our relationship to another level.
Yeah.
The everything friends, yes.
Literally. And it's, because can you tell, before we wrap up, can you tell everybody about our biome syncing that we do?
Yes.
I think Lincoln actually witnessed it
yes.
as I came into the building.
So the backstory reference for biome syncing, if you don't know who Zach Bush is,
Okay.
you need to, he's a safe place on social media.
Absolutely.
So you can go find Zach Bush.
Okay.
Yeah.
You will thank me.
Yes, indeed.
So we all have a biome and a microbiome, and it brings us back to being in community. We are designed to be in community with each other, not just for ourselves as humans, but for the biomes that we carry around us. We're actually, interesting fact, more virus and bacteria and fungus than we are human. So just think about that, and good thing. So when you hug another person, your biome syncs and gathers information from the person that you're hugging, and you're upgraded.
Okay.
And your nervous system balances. So that's what Shaamiela and I joke we're doing when we hug.
Yes.
We breathe together and our biomes sync. And there is a beautiful calming experience that comes with doing that.
Yes.
So find Zach Bush,
Okay.
Yes.
find a safe person, hug them, sync your biome, and you will thank me.
I may not be Zach Bush, but I was observer of that, and it looked pretty good.
It did.
As an
It
outsider.
feels so good.
Yeah.
It feels so good.
Yeah.
And that's like, I love doing that now. And just being so conscious of it as we do it. And also just, I mean, I say this to you all the time, that, you have a nervous system that, gives my nervous system permission. You have a human that gives my human permission. Yeah, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful that you got to meet my other human friend, Lincoln.
Yeah.
And it's so great. And and so I guess maybe just in closing, my thought is on that point, which is that the more you connect to your own humanity and your own humanness, the more you give permission to other humans to do the same.
Very true.
And so I would ask you to, be aware, like notice how when you let yourself be human, how it shows up in people's faces, in their body, in their nervous system. And I'm just so grateful to be human on this planet in this time.
I think just as mine, I'll say, if we move it all this year, maybe move towards connection,
Yes,
towards community, and towards compassion.
absolutely.
Yes.
So for myself, Lincoln, until next time.
And we, Shaamiela, we send you greetings and love.
Well, that was The Human Story, brought to you by Yoked Media. Stay tuned for more on The Human Story.